things such as artillery guns and whatnot. Now let's go back to the front, climb on top of the tank, and get a better look at the engine bay. Okay, so let's climb up on top of the tank. To climb up, you've got a footstep over here. So put your foot there, grab hold of the handles, and then simply just climb up like you would any other vehicle. Sean is already up at the top of the vehicle. Now let's go take a look at the engine bay. Okay, so now we've got the engine exposed, so let's take a closer look. In powering the Chaffee, we've got two Cadillac V8 engines, both of which combined provide 220 horsepower. Also of note is that these two engines are hooked up to the GM Hydromatic automatic transmission system, which was the first mass-produced automatic transmission system in the world. Now, each engine powers its own generator through a belt, and they both have their own individual radiators farther back. Each engine has an automatic choke system controlled by the temperature of the engine, and under these two red caps we've got the dipsticks for the engine oil and the transmission fluid. And then if you look all the way back here, underneath the engine cover, we've got the radiators. So under this cover, we can access the coolant tank. Now, let's talk about the turret and the inside of the vehicle.
So here we are at the top of the tank. The Chaffee had a three-man turret crew, the gunner, the loader, and the commander, and was very much of a hunter-killer design. On the top of the turret, we've got interesting points, including the position for the gunner's periscope, a searchlight controlled by the commander, a mount for a 50 caliber machine gun, an antenna mount, a storage bin on the back of the turret, and something very interesting. This cupola here, so I'll pass you off to Johan to talk about it.
Right. So from an engineering perspective, this cupola is particularly interesting because it's a good example of what roller bearings are. The top of this cupola can actually rotate 360 degrees. So when the commander is using his periscope, which would have been mounted here, he'd be able to have a 360 degree field of view by simply rotating the entire top of the cupola. The reason why this is possible is because it's mounted on roller bearings, which you can see exposed. Now, I guess we better climb inside and check out the turret. Okay, I'll climb into the gunner's position first, so to do that, I'll need to use the commander's hatch.
And I'll follow him, sitting right down in the commander's position. Now, to our right is the loader's seat. Now, why don't you all come down and join us? So here we are inside the turret of the Chaffee. As you can see, it's a three-man turret, the gunner, the loader, and the commander, which is a major improvement over the Stuart tanks, which only had two men in them, that being the loader and the commander, who also served as the gunner. This improvement allows the commander to pay far more attention to the surroundings and situation, and to focus on commanding the vehicle. Now, around us, we've got space for all kinds of equipment, including a mount for the M3 grease gun, which was issued to vehicle crews even in the Abrams up till Desert Storm. Here we've got the intercom and the radio, and we've also got controls for the spotlight mentioned above. Now, I'll pass you off to Johan to talk about the gunner's position.
Right, you guys probably can't see me very well, so let me elevate this gun to get the breech out of my face. This vehicle turret, even though it's larger than the Stuart's, is still incredibly cramped, so Sean, I'm going to need you to stand up before I can lower the gun. The crew commander's seat is able to fold up, just for this reason. So now let's lower the gun. or elevate the gun and lower the breech. Right then, now you can probably see me better. I'm in the vehicle gunner position. So in front of me, we've got the gunner periscope, which we talked about earlier, and to my right, we've got the main star of the turret, the 75mm gun. This particular gun is demilitarized, so it's missing major parts such as the breech block on the back, but we can still see the barrel, and we can see a bit of the recoil mechanism here, which would have dampened the shock of the gun recoiling backwards. Also important features are these two metal bars on both sides of the gun. These bars would protect the loader, gunner, and commander from accidentally leaning into the path of the gun as it recoiled backwards. Now, to control the gun, I've got two methods. Over here, I've got this handle, which is the trigger for the gun. And if I turn it left while the vehicle is on, or turn it right, I can traverse the turret left or right up to 360 degrees of rotation with the powered hydraulic traverse. Of course, right now we don't have power, so I can use the backup system, which is the manual traverse over here. Simply press down on the detent, and then turn left to rotate the turret to the left, and right to turn the turret to the right.
Left.
In terms of elevation, I've got this wheel down here, which will let me rotate the gun, or elevate the gun if I turn it backwards, and depress the gun if I turn it forwards. In front of the gunner are the mountings for the main gun sights. Unfortunately, this particular Chaffee doesn't have the sights mounted. Now let's move on to the driver's position. Right guys, so we're in the driver's seat right now, and there's something really special that's going to happen soon under the supervision of museum staff, but we'll keep that for later. So first of all, let's go over what's here. Like with all your other vehicles, you've got the main console in front of the driver, you've got all the basic stuff, speed, engine temperature, your light controls. An interesting thing to note here is that because there are two engines on the Chaffee, each one has its own tachometer and engine temperature gauge on the front console. Steering on the Chaffee is accomplished by using two tillers, one located on each side of the driver. When a tiller is pulled back, it brakes the track that it's in control of and either slows down that track or stops it completely, allowing the tank to either turn around that side or stop completely when both tillers are pulled. Also to the right of the driver are two levers. The big one controls the transfer case, and the small one controls the transmission. Behind the driver is a circuit breaker for the wipers, and also an emergency ignition switch. Note that it is in neutral right now because of what we're about to do. So, like I said, the museum staff is watching us right now. The guy who maintains this tank is right on top of me right now, so here's a little demo. So first of all, there's two ignition switches, so if you can just come look at the center console. So there's two ignition switches here for both engines. So this one's for the right engine, this one's for the left engine, this one, and then this will turn on the engine. Right, so off to the next position now. We'll turn off the engines by just turning the ignition. Okay, so now we've climbed down from the turret into the seat beside the driver's seat, the co-driver's seat. So, in active military M24, you would have had a front bow gun mounted over here. Unfortunately, in the demilitarizing process, that was removed. So now we only have a barrel to show you what it would have looked like from the outside. Now, the co-driver's main job was to, well, co-drive the tank. He would be able to control the front bow machine gun, But most importantly, he had a duplicate set of controls, so I've got 2 tillers at the front on both sides of me to control the steering, as well as a gas pedal. That way, if something ever happened to the driver, the co-driver would be able to take over duties and hopefully get the tank to a safe area. Okay, that's about it, guys. Thanks for watching, and most importantly, thanks to the Ontario Regiment Museum for supporting all our videos. If you guys have time and you're in Canada, you should definitely go visit them. They're located in Oshawa, Ontario, and maybe think about giving them a donation because they help us out a lot. That's about it. Time to head out before the Germans get here.
With a tank that has less firepower or less armour protection than the enemy. We were fed up of being knocked around by those bigger tanks you can see in the museum, the German Tiger tank, the King Tiger and the Panther. And that thinking you can see on this tank here. When this tank came into service, it was by far the most sophisticated and powerful tank in the world. It's got this enormous gun on it. That's what they call a 120mm high-velocity gun.
Large Citizens
And the whole of that turret system and that gun was designed for knocking out a lot of enemy tanks. When it was firing at another tank, it didn't fire a bullet-shaped round that we're used to seeing like coming out of a rifle or a gun. It would fire a piston out the end of the barrel. When the piston left the barrel, it was one of the fastest things on Earth. Sides of the piston would fall away and it would reveal about a 13-inch long metal dart, little fins on the back to keep it straight in flight, just like a dart you throw a dartboard. No explosive on it at all, made of tungsten, which is twice the weight of steel, so just by the sheer pure metal there and the enormous kinetic energy, in other words the welly behind that round, it would smash its way into an enemy tank quite often all the way through and out the other
My Little
side.
Pony meets Rabai,
And a
Maine meets Emmy,
well-trained
Action
crew
DC
got
Superhero
that gun
Girls meets
so
Strawberry
accurate,
Shortcake and Vanilla meets High
98 times out of 100 they could hit a target out to 3 kilometres away with the very first round. So basically if you're in range and this is pointing at you, you're a goner. It is 3 guys in the turret. The commander, he's got his hatch open there, he's got that machine gun. He's looking out for targets all the time and telling the gunner who sits in front of him in the turret where to aim the gun. The gunner has a little, like a joystick for aiming the gun with a trigger on it. And when he's actually got the crosshairs on the target, he pulls that joystick, that trigger, and the gun fires. The third crew member in the turret is a loader. And if you ever have to pick a tank crew for yourself, always pick your loader, someone who's short, stocky, built like a Russian shot putter, because the rate of fire in that tank will go down as the loader gets worn out. Good trained crew. Well, training's vital. You can have the best tank in the world. You haven't got a good crew, it's no good for anyone. A well-trained crew would be firing off that gun and would turn about 6 to 8 rounds off the minute, and they can go much faster than that if they had to. But of course, it's very wearing and tiring picking these big rounds up, which is why, again, fitness is quite important for a crew as well. Fourth crew member is a driver. He's right down the front of the vehicle, underneath the barrel of that gun, and he's driving the vehicle in what they call a supine position. He's almost lying on his back driving it. And that's so that he's low down, the tank barrel can be low, and the whole turret is low down, and therefore you're less of a target to see, and less of a target to hit. And the other great thing about the Chieftain is what they call a fully stabilised gun. They can lock the gun on target, and the tank can move, and the gun will remain locked on the target.
Virtual Cup to meets Midtown Madness.
Now the Chieftain has really thick armour on the front. This is still the generation that was mainly made of steel, and when the Russians got bigger guns on their tanks, we added more armour to our tank. So if you look at the front of the turret, it's almost got like extra cheek pieces either side of the barrel. That was armour that was added extra later on in its production run to give even more protection back. But it was a great tank, no two ways about it. And in a funny way, it was probably one of our most successful tanks ever. It never had to fire its gun in anger. It did its job sitting out in Germany in the Cold War, and